This is the Analysis in Chains with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
Hey everybody, Nathan here. Welcome to Analysis in Chains. I've got a very special guest here today, Bob Summerwill. Bob is a very high-profile person in the blockchain community, and we're honored to have him as a guest today. He's the community ambassador at Sweetbridge and has a long history of his work with Ethereum. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, I'm glad to be with you. So yes, I've been involved in the blockchain space over the last. Started in 2014. I actually met Vitalik in the summer of 2014. I'd seen the white paper and so on earlier that year. I've been lucky enough that a friend of mine, David Lowy here in Vancouver, had sort of introduced me to the whole space. And at that time it was all everything was Bitcoin. You got Ripple stuff happening as well. And Ethereum was just sort of a future kind of dream. And I was lucky enough to meet Vitalik, but I kind of went on with my life. But then 2015, I was in Toronto, and things were getting really serious, and that's really where my journey began.
Did you imagine Ethereum would take off the way it did when you first got started? Did you see that spark in Vitalik when you met him, or did it sort of catch you by surprise?
I saw that spark. I really did. But I mean, when I met him there in 2014, I thought, I've met a genius. I remember posting on Facebook, to my friends, none of you will know who this guy is. But I think I've met a genius who is going to have a significant impact on this world. And it was an honor to meet him there. But still, to my mind, there I was focusing on other things at the time. I'd had a long games industry background. That's most of my professional career has been video games. And I was just sort of moving out from a 15-year long career at Electronic Arts to interest in mobile and wearables and things. And that's really where my focus was at the time. So I just thought, well, great. And I remember saying to him at the time, so it's like a single threaded computer for the whole world. And so how's that going to scale then? It's an interesting idea, and he's saying, well, we've got these ideas about sharding and proof of stake and so on. And, it's just, well, good luck, young man. I'll keep my eyes on you. But yeah, it was just sort of really, the following year when I, so that was from April 2015 onwards. I was in Toronto and got the opportunity to go to large meetups. So that was the other thing, is that the meetup scene for blockchain in Vancouver in 2015 or 2014, it's just it's guys in a basement. It's like 5 or 10 people, just really dreamers.
Did it really take off after that? How big is the scene in Vancouver right now?
Well, it has now. But yeah, I mean, when I went to Toronto in 2015, the contrast was from going from like 10 or 15 people to going to 400 or 500, in massive scale meetups at the Mars, the Mars Discovery Center at the university there, going to Deck Tech run by Anthony Diorio, and going to Decentral and meeting with Jeff Coleman, and I got to meet Vitalik again, and Mugyar was there, and Nick Dodson and others who were later at Consensus, and Matt Spoke, and all of these characters were there in Toronto, and it's a real hub. So, at that point, that was a really big step up where I, realized both from meeting those and also the mainnet was about to launch. It was Frontier was coming up in that July. They've done it. Wow, they've really done it. Yeah, there's work to do, obviously, but this thing is going to happen. This thing is going to be for real. And really, I mean, my thought at that time was, if the impact here is going to be as significant as it looks like, this is going to be the new web, the new internet, the new Linux kind of style, I have to be involved. I can't not be involved. It's fascinating. So,
So you really managed to get in. You slid in right on the ground floor then.
Yeah, what I started doing was because I was into wearables. It's like, well, can I get an Ethereum node running on my smartwatch? Can I do that? Is that possible? So that was like my little hobby project thing that I started on.
Was it back at the time? Could you mine with a smartwatch?
I never got it to work. Funnily enough, that's my New Year's resolution for 2018 is actually to finish off that piece of work, because it was one of these things where you have an initial thing and then you go, oh well, to solve that I need to do this, and to solve that I need to do that, and it's I've just gone off on this crazy adventure which started with just a sort of little thing on the side. And then ended up with me working at the Ethereum Foundation, and then working at Consensus, and then helping to found the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and then now working on this global scale project at Sweetbridge. But I guess this is the story of a lot of frontier technologies. Is it's the people who have got an itch to scratch. It's the people who jump in and engage. You go and discover and find things, and back then it was you hadn't really got any kind of barrier to entry. It's just like, have you got time? Have you got skills? Help.
It's always so fascinating because we tend to, the average person, we see these finished products, Ethereum, it's like this global juggernaut. It's, like half of all new tokens are built on it or more. I don't even know the number. And, but, to talk to someone who's sort of there at the beginning, it's a completely different perspective. How was it at the beginning? How solid were these ideas? Did they sort of make it up as they go along, or did they really have a clear idea of how they were going to solve the scaling problems? Like, was it actively excited, or were they sort of was it more of a, well, we stumbled into something that worked?
Well, so while I'd seen the things early on, I was only actively engaging a year later. So it's a bit secondhand my knowledge of those early times. But I think from there's a prehistory of the Ethereum protocol blog post that Vitalik's got that you should have a look for. It's just called literally Prehistory of the Ethereum protocol. I think he wrote it in September of this last year, where he talks a lot about how where his thoughts came early on, and then other people getting involved and so on. And I think an awful lot of it was really very emergent. And his key recognition, which was the fact that the early Bitcoin 2.0 projects, as they were called, things like, well, can we do Namecoin? Can we do a naming thing? Can we do shares? Can we do insurance? Can we do X, Y, Z? All of these ideas, which were, being floated around like really early, probably 2011, even 2012, 2013, and certainly a lot of them in 2014, people thinking, well, look, Bitcoin works. What else can we do with this technology? And all the early efforts there took the same approach, which is, we're going to make an altcoin. We're going to fork the Bitcoin client, and then we're going to tweak some bits and bobs. A lot of them were just literally that. They're literally just doing the same. The more interesting ones were going, okay, well, we're going to add some more operations in. Right, for the naming thing, we're going to have add a name, get a name, or whatever kind of the primitive extra operations that you're adding into into that instruction set. He had been at Waterloo. He was an undergraduate at Waterloo, but just realised that he was getting obsessed this way as well, and he was actually spending all of his time on Bitcoin projects, not on studying. And that he should really just go and do that. And his parents, were supportive of that, which is, a fantastic thing to have. So
probably a little rare, to be honest.
Absolutely rare. so he went off on his 6-month, trip around the world, going and working with all these projects, going and working on colored coins, working with Mastercoin, off to the squat in Barcelona with Ayataki, and basically like going around the world, talking to these dreamers, and working out, well, how can we move forward on this thing? And the realization he came to was that, in a standard kind of software engineering way, well, you haven't separated the platform from the application. That really Bitcoin was doing two things at the same time. It was you got the invention of the blockchain as a platform. You'd got the ability to build a cryptocurrency on top of that, and the virtuous circle that you have there, where that cryptocurrency is then what you can use to incentivize the securing of that platform through mining. And there you go. That the whole thing works. But you basically tied the application into that platform. It's basically a platform for doing peer-to-peer money, and that's it.
Yep.
So you had other efforts at doing things using Bitcoin. Things like Factum. Okay, well we can hash a document, and we can anchor the hash on the chain, and there you go. You can do registries. And various other projects have also tried to do sort of layer 2-y kind of things by just anchoring that data. But the problem is that they're not, firstly, that they're not really a native thing. It's kind of a bit of an ugly hack, stick in a bit of data that means something in some other external system. That's not very pretty. But the bigger problem really was just fragmentation. If you follow that approach, well, every time you do a new project, you have to somehow persuade people to come and join you, to say, hey, miners, there's value in this, come and mine this instead of Bitcoin, and there's a real friction and a real overhead to do that means if you want to do a pretty small scale project, you probably can't. You're probably not going to get the critical mass to get off the ground. So yeah, his recognition really was that, well, firstly, you want to decouple the applications from the platform, but also in the process of doing that, what you can do is, rather than try and define, well, what are the operations that you can do, is say, well, make it do anything. Basically build a virtual machine, build a Turing complete virtual machine. And it's a standard kind of approach that's been used time and time again. That's what Java is, that's what JavaScript in browsers are, and that's what .NET is. That's what any other of myriad platforms that we have are, is saying, you've got your bare metal, your machines at the bottom, and you what you really need is to build a platform that you can build applications on top of. And then, and over time, that platform grows beyond what you have at the moment in Ethereum, which is literally just the virtual machine. So it's kind of like you're writing to it, in a low-level language, but all of the things that you expect to have in a mature modern platform, are still emerging, like standard libraries, frameworks for development, best practice standards, good tooling, middleware, analytics, anything you care to mention that make a platform easy to develop for, are things which are still emerging. And this is why, people are saying, well, Ethereum is dangerous. You can lose all your money in a wallet. There's a solidity bug, and you can lose everything. And it's like, yes, that's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that the thing is fatally flawed forever. All it talks about is the fact that we're in stage one of a multi-stage development. I think that, people commonly say, it's like we're in 1993 or whatever, right? And, the web's about to launch. But I think the reality is it's more like we're in 1986. And, everything is written in C with the GCC compiler, and you haven't got any debugger. It's like you're doing print statements to see, well, what's the value of these things? And basically anything can crash, like you can crash and go off to a bad place. You can leak memory. You can do everything bad.
You drop a semicolon, the whole thing crashes.
Absolutely. It's like you're working with razor blades, right? You're swinging around samurai swords. It's very powerful in the right hands, and it's very, very dangerous in inexperienced hands. And you see with something like that parity multisig issue, that even the most capable people in the world, the company that Gavin Wood has built, who built the first Ethereum client, was in there at the very start. Even that company, can make mistakes, because humans make mistakes. All computer systems have got bugs in them, loads of them. They always have, they always will. And all that you can do is improve over time, and we're just missing the tools to make it safe. But that doesn't mean there's no value there. If you think, well, how many, all of the computer systems that were built in the 1970s and 1980s and even early 1990s, how much value was delivered to humanity by all of those, vast amounts. And, they were written in dangerous languages, or you go back even further, before you even had C, where everything was built in assembler, hand constructed, or in COBOL or Fortran or whatever, massively dangerous, you could say, but huge value as well.
It expands over time as well. As computing is always an arms race, right. And at the beginning, you need people who know what they're doing to be programming. That's all it is. It's a dangerous tool. It's something that needs experts. I mean, in the beginning, you couldn't have people writing. The average person couldn't write a web page. No. And there is, and now the average person can, because the tools have been developed by people who know what they're doing. The average person couldn't put together most computer programs, and now there's more advanced computer languages, that people can use. And I think that's just on the way.
That's it. And if you think about mobile as another example, right? So iPhone was 2007. It was only 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, everyone uses mobile. The most untechnical people, are kind of mobile first. Like pretty much everyone in the Western world, can, send an email, has maybe got a Facebook account, can use Word, is doing, some stuff, and then maybe on their phone, they're using maps for navigation, they're getting their messages in and what have you. And I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen here, is in the same way as people, are now, ubiquitously using like a debit card or a credit card, or online banking. Well, that's the experience that we're going to get to here as well. It's just we're not there yet, So it's thinking of my own background, for example. So I was lucky enough that my dad was using computers in the early 80s. So I actually started programming in 1984 when I was 10. Because he was sort of doing some of that stuff out of his own curiosity for his work. He was actually making a sort of a library and shop, Web3 kind of system thing in Clipper. So he was doing sort of database programming, with not really with any kind of UI, sort of text UI, kind of menu options, press 1 to check out a book kind of thing, and that talking to a database, and he started doing that stuff. In the evenings, do a bit of stuff in that evenings, bring it home, and I'm just a curious kid. What are you doing, Dad? What's that thing? How does it work? What's happening? So, and when I first got involved there in 1984, talking about the level of experience you need, well, there weren't really users of computers at that point, right? You had to be like a programmer. You had to do it. Like there was hardly any abstraction. Well, basic, I guess. You could learn, you'd learn basic, and at least you weren't having to do like machine code or assembler. Though really, beyond doing some simple things like you were, it's like, okay, well, here, poke this number into this magic address, or doing like, right, I'm going to do a user-defined graphics, right? I've got an 8x8 grid of pixels, and I want to make my own shapes. So, like literally like on graph paper, well, that column is 128, that's 64. So pixel and that pixel, I have to add 128 and 7 and 4, and then poke that number into, address 305 or whatever.
Geez, you're bringing back memories, man.
Right.
80s kids like us. Did you used to do this? I had this magazine called Family and Home Office Computing, and it would have a little computer game that you could type. You had to type it in BASIC.
And the Usborne books as well. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
So it was like, whatever, Island of Adventure or whatever. And it had got sort of, you're going to a strange island, go north, go south, that sort of stuff. Talk to,
back memories.
But you'd have listings. It's literally, here's the program to type in. Here, type in this big basic program and run it. And you hope that you typed it in right, or it's going to not work. But
and in a big way, that's what's probably going to be needed for something like Ethereum, as people, to mainstream it. People, make your own smart contract. Here, type this in, and says, "Oh, this isn't so scary."
Well, this has been what I've done for 30 years or so. Is follow this sort of adventure as things go through, and then all those years working in the games industry is also really quite low level. You've got very resource constrained hardware, very limited kind of spec on games consoles, for example, compared to what you'd have on a general PC. And, same deal again on mobile is you've got these consumer devices, and, they're not as capable as a desktop PC or whatever. But they're also fixed as well, that it is what it is, and it's going to be like that for 5 or 10 years. It's not like you get to upgrade the memory or whatever. It's got what it's got, and you've just got to somehow make that work. So I think that sort of background really set me up for joining in on the base level at Ethereum there. But the other thing is that while I was working all my time at Electronic Arts, I ended up working in a lot of collaborative projects, really. That you've got the same kind of dynamic within large enterprises as you have outside, which is that you've got different different projects and different studios and different tech bases, and trying to work out, well, what are you guys doing, and what are the different projects, and what do you need, and what do you do, and what have we got in common, and could we have a shared library? Could we collaborate and really, that within the games industry has got to a point now where, all middleware now exists, which it didn't at the start. At the start of my games career in 1996, you literally couldn't buy a game engine. You did everything yourself.
Now, back then, everything was coded by hand.
and I mean, that's sort of like saying, well, hey, you're a house builder, are you? Oh, right. You make your own bricks. You forge your own nails. Do you? Yes, I do. Okay.
Cut down your own lumber.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of frontier. That is the frontier, right? Is you do everything yourself because nobody has done this before. It's literally not happened. You have to make these things, but then you go through this maturity process of going, okay, well, we've made a few of these bricks now. They're just bricks. Can we have a brick standard?
Can we separate the brick layer from the house layer?
Okay, there looks like there's a job here for somebody to make bricks. Can we agree on a standard for bricks? Right, this is a standard brick size. Okay, now maybe people can go off and make brick making companies. And this is the process that the whole thing goes through, right? Is at the start you are literally in uncharted territory, and you have to do and make everything and explore everything and work it all out yourself. And then more and more people start turning up, and you can start specializing, and you can start solidifying the lower layers and saying, I think we've got that sorted, and let's move it up an abstraction layer.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, because how solid do you see the lower levels being? I mean, we've got a couple of the major players, right? We've got the Bitcoin blockchain and all of its forks, the offshoots of the Bitcoin blockchain, Dash and Litecoin. You've got sort of Ethereum that cropped up, separating out that brick layer from the house layer, the technology from the data there, and you have some strange ones like IOTA that are coming up. How far away do you see us from being from having sort of a couple of standards or ways of doing things?
Well, I think we're getting really close. I mean, really, the other thing to say is that you could see some of these various technologies as being classified into particular generations. Is really that Bitcoin is the first generation. It got the it got the application and the platform bundled together. Then Ethereum is sort of an Ethereum likes are sort of generation 2 is going, okay, well we've pulled those bits apart, and also sort of the beginnings of proof of stake coming in on generation 2, though Ethereum itself is still proof of work. But I mean that's another sort of ongoing trend for sure. Is going, well, hey, proof of work. Great, there you go. That was the first solution for getting to a sort of a fair split. But can we do something which has got the same kind of crypto economic properties, or better even, without destroying the planet?
Without burning the entire energy consumption of Ireland? Yeah, right, that's an interesting idea.
Can we do that? Because if we can, that would be good. And
that would be less negative, perhaps.
And it kind of looks like that. That is possible, and that you can maybe even get better characteristics from that. In that the approach that you have with proof of work is really like make everything expensive, and then cheating is really expensive. Whereas if you can make good behavior, cheap, and make bad behavior really expensive. That would be better. I mean, and something Vlad Zamfir has said is, can you make it so that if you double spend, you basically get a nuclear bomb on your factory? Can you make it like that, so that it's like your farm gets burnt to the ground if you cheat? Can we do that?
I'm just imagining this this graphic popping up on your machine of like this Viking saying no, and crashing your computer as you cheat.
I have set fire to your CPU. Bang.
What is that smoke?
That's it. But really seeing, can you make normal good collaboration, a cheap and easy thing? So that you're not having to pay huge fees to do something. You're paying reasonable fees, and also moving away from this specialist hardware. I mean, that was another thing which I think Ethereum did very right, is making things ASIC resistant from the start. Saying we don't want industrial scale farming. Like who on earth wants these factories full of specialist hardware? That's just crazy.
And it ends up centralizing a system meant to be decentralized.
It absolutely does, because it makes it industrial scale. I mean, this is the funny thing, which a lot of people will say, well, Ethereum is very centralized. Well, Bitcoin is very centralized because of the mining.
Absolutely,
horrifically centralized there. So basically the first step there, making things ASIC resistant. So you'll do GPU mining, but that's it. And GPU mining is obviously a lot more accessible to people, but really you don't even want that. What the aim would be on Casper or other proof of stake is it's literally just CPU mining. That your back cow
really democratized.
Absolutely,
any person with a smartwatch can mine it.
Well, that's it. Or hey, I've got a Raspberry Pi that's sort of acting as my media server. Sitting at home. I've got this this thing running, this staker node, which is like a miner node, but just through staking, and it's just sitting there, securing the network and earning you a little bit of income. That's sort of the model that you really want is a node in every home. and then maybe your mobile devices and your watch or whatever are connecting to your node, so that you're not like trying to run mining on a watch or a phone or whatever, but where it will be draining your battery and so on. Maybe that's a thing that kind of needs plugging in the wall. But that could be at home. That could be a home node that's just sitting there securing the network, and really get to a point where, all these factories, they're gone. People with racks and racks of GPUs. I mean, come on, that's silly, isn't it? Like, really? Come on. If we can not do that, who would want to not do that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that will share that sentiment, especially with, the electricity cost of Bitcoin. I'm conscious of our time, and I wanted to ask you about your current position now. You've moved on from a full-time job with Ethereum and Ethereum Foundation and all of that into a new position at Sweetbridge. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, after my time at the foundation, I spent the last year through till October just gone, helping to set up the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. But then, yes, I joined Sweetbridge. So Sweetbridge are a Phoenix-based company, all around the world. I live here in Vancouver in Canada. Various other people live the world. And to my mind, Sweetbridge are perhaps the most interesting and potential for impact project in blockchain in the world at the moment, which is why, when I heard and saw what they were doing, I had to stop what I was doing and go and help. Even though I was, at Consensus, at the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, in a job I was really enjoying, in a role that probably, most people in the world would kill to be in. It's like, I'm going to go over here now.
We had Scott Nelson on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling us a little bit about Sweetbridge, about how it's meant to solve supply chain issues with the delay in funding at various levels of supply chain, being able to borrow against assets you might have in order to sort of equalize the playing field between big and small companies. But maybe in your own words, you can say sort of what you saw as the reason that this was earth-shattering.
Absolutely. And it's about scale of ambition. If you look at the scope of, assets on chain, the pure crypto area, now coming up to, whatever it is, 700 billion or what have you. Traditional finance, I think, is 19 trillion a year, something like that. Supply chains are 54 trillion. It's 2/3 of the world's economy. It's impacting, there's 3 billion people involved in that side of things, because it's basically it's everything physical in the world. I mean, you say supply chain, but really you could call it trade or commerce. It's just business, really. Business with physical things. Basically all food, everything made in factories, all shipping, retail, just basically everything physical in the whole world. It's the majority of commerce. And really getting that on a blockchain basis is where this stuff becomes real, right? That's where blockchain goes mainstream, that it becomes a part of everything that everyone is doing, where it becomes as ubiquitous as the internet, as mobile phones have been, as Linux has been, where it just, you don't even think about it. It's just, well, that's how things are run on, right?
So do you see the sort of the widespread adoption of blockchain to be when enterprise sort of takes it over, or when individuals are actively using cryptocurrencies in their daily lives, or more when the average person doesn't see blockchain in their daily lives?
Well, I think it's all of those things, actually.
Oh, really?
Because to use cryptocurrencies in your daily life, well, what are you going to use them for? for doing real business things, right? You have to have these things all together. It's really getting to a point where where cryptocurrencies are being used for day-to-day things, where it's literally, pay with PayPal, pay with Visa, pay with, Bitcoin, pay with Ether, pay with Sweetcoin or whatever, Bridgecoin. So really, I think that you need both. You need to build up the technology so that you've got the foundation there. But really, where you have impact, and this is where Sweetbridge, I think, are so important, is actually, is working with enterprises, real businesses, working with governments, working with regulators to normalize this stuff, right? To get past the, well, we're going to bring down the Fed, we're going to burn it all down,
which is where it all started, right? Like people wanting to burn down society and live off grid in a way.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, I think there's two viable places that this can work. You can be of that mindset, right? Is saying, I'm going to be off grid. Taxation is theft. I'm a crypto anarchist. I'm a pure libertarian, and there is no role for government. Everyone, not quite greed is good, but your Randian kind of, the virtue of selfishness. And I mean that works and is viable on your own.
Yeah.
If you want to go and live away in a cabin somewhere and have no running water, or nothing supplied to you, not to have any services, fine. But if you want to live as part of society, you can't treat other people's welfare as an externality to your financial model. And I think that's what that mindset does, is it says, I'm going to optimize for myself, and other people should all do that as well. And if they can't make that work, well, tough for them, they should die.
I think we've seen a lot of that sort of mentality creep up over the past few years.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think there's a bit of zeitgeist in the world that way as well, right? Is, everything's going to shit. Well, lying media, just everyone.
Let's just look out for me. I get mine.
That's it. Pull up the drawbridge. I don't want these people leeching off me. All these terrible, refugees wanting to come in and leech off us and so on. That kind of mindset. But it doesn't work. I don't think it works because it's selfish. It's bad.
Well.
And if you
then one last thing I wanted to just ask you, Bob, is a lot of people have said blockchain has a lot of potential to have positive social impact.
Absolutely.
And even though the majority of people are coming maybe into blockchain because of the potential to make quick money in the bubble. However, how do you see the maybe the biggest ways that in your life? How do you see the biggest ways that blockchain can make a positive impact in the world?
So yeah, really, that's why I got involved in the first place. Is seeing the potential that blockchain can have for proactive, positive reaction to problems, right? Rather than drawing up the drawbridge and running away, and really saying, well, if you have a peer-to-peer system for value exchange mutually between consenting parties, what you start to do is you start to pull the controls back from those central, those choke points, from monopolistic companies or from overreaching government, and really you start to put power back in the hands of good meaning individuals who can go from feeling like powerless puppets within this game to saying, well, look, if you want to do some good, well, start doing it. Here is a tool for collaboration, for building organizations, for building businesses, and for interacting between people anywhere in the world. It's kind of what the internet should have been. it really is another, it's sort of the next round of the internet where, because you didn't have any means for payment built in, all the existing, businesses just got glommed on the side. So then everything's sort of these indirect, ad supported models and, data farming and so on. And what you can really do is get back to this real peer-to-peer model where anyone in the world can seek out, their fellow travelers and start collaborating and doing things together. And really just getting power back, into local communities, letting small businesses, compete on a level playing field, and really, empowering and democratizing every citizen on the planet.
It's really an exciting time. I mean, it's going to be amazing to see what comes out of the next few years.
Absolutely, it's an awesome time, and I think this year is really pivotal. I think by the end of this year, we're going to have moved along substantially where we're seeing real production systems. We're seeing live stuff building on blockchain. That this is starting to make a real appearance. This is not theoretical. This is really happening.
Yeah, it's definitely caught the mainstream. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. Bob Summerwill is the community ambassador at Sweetbridge. And Bob, hope to talk to you again and have you on the show in the future.
It's been a pleasure. That would be fantastic. All the best. Cheers.
All the best.